Hello and welcome to Hurt Less, Live More, a show where we acknowledge the hurt we experience in life and find ways to move on from those hurts to live life to the full. I'm JJ Stenhouse. I'm the practical alchemist, and I'm here as ever with psychiatrist and coach Dr. Mark Goulston. And we talked about asking for things in life.
And why that's so difficult.
Yes.
And I know I have that difficulty, and
I do too. Yeah.
And as I drill down, I think it's there's a whole bunch of reasons. I don't want to burden anyone, and there's a part of me that feels like if to ask anyone is a burden. And I think part of that, my parents did the best they could, but I think, my dad felt probably under a lot of pressure, probably a lot of fear. Can I support this family? And of course, he wasn't that open or about expressing that, like many people, especially men, and it could come off as kind of a moodiness. And so I think there was a part of me that unconsciously felt, geez, he's already not in the best mood. He's probably already feeling that he's trying to keep things afloat. I don't want to add to his burden. And part of it was, caring. I didn't want to add to his burden, but also it was not wanting to anger him, because, rather than being open about that, and men don't do that about their fears. I don't know if I can keep supporting this family. Men especially demonstrate it as being sullen or I'm fine or moody, and we don't open up, because it's a sign of weakness, a sign that we're not as good as the other people. It's interesting. There's something that is seared into my memory that on the occasions when I would ask for something, the response was, what do you need it for? So there was a shaming. And it's interesting. And my dad died 1995, but I've replayed that in my mind because I wanted to let go of the resentment that I felt, the hurt and the resentment. And what I realized is that what was going on inside him was that he had a fair amount of pride. He wanted to believe that he was as good a dad as other dads. And so if he could convince himself that he gave us anything we needed, he was a good dad. And so if we wanted something, by saying, what do you need it for? He was actually saying, I'm already stressed out, but I believe I'm a good dad and I give you what you need. And I don't think you need that. And when I can see that he came more from the fear of, can I provide for this family, as opposed to shaming me, I've become much more forgiving. And if this hits a chord for any of you who are listening, what would have made all the difference in the world, but that wasn't his vocabulary, that wasn't his generation. If he had said, I would love to not only give you what you need, but give you what you want. But I worry about supporting the family. I worry about, can I do it? And I would like nothing more than to give you what you need, which I believe I do. You have a roof over your head. We provide you with food. But I would like to lavish you with what you want. I would even like to spoil you. But I'm worried. If he had said that, now maybe I wouldn't have understood that at 7 years of age, but as a teenager, if he had just said that, I would have gotten very soft. I would have said, you're a good dad. I see how hard you work. And I see that at times it's kind of joyless. but you're duty bound to take care of us. And that's okay, Dad, because I see how hard you work. We could have had a conversation that we never had.
Yeah.
So what is this triggering for you, JJ? And then we'll keep the conversation going.
Well, I think that you probably would have understood at the age of 7 or however young you might have been. I think that even as young children, I remember when I was that age, around 6 or 7, I did understand things that my parents said to me, even though they maybe thought that I didn't really understand. I knew what was going on. You know, I had eyes and ears and I knew how things were. And I think what was going through my head as you were talking was that, you know, in my case, I just never felt that my needs were met in the sense that I had food and I had clothes and I had a roof over my head. But, you know, if ever I asked for something, the answer was very often no, right? So you get to the point where you just think, well, no point in asking, you know, because there wasn't much money. For a lot of the time. And at some points there was lots of money. But, you know, when I was quite young, there wasn't a great deal of money in the household. And, so, you know, you would ask for something or you'd see something in a shop window and you'd say, well, can I have that, please? And I would get the answer no. Now, I mean, I think that it's a good thing to say no to children when they want something, but somehow I just never felt that I never felt that I was getting the things that I needed. So there was a lot that I felt that I needed or I couldn't even articulate what it is that I needed. But I kind of got to a point where I thought that I wasn't getting what I was needing. And so it became pointless asking for it. And I think that's what stuck with me throughout my adult life is this, well, if I do ask for something, it's very unlikely that I'll get it. And if I do get it, it probably won't match up to what I need. So there's no point. So there was this, you know, this entrainment or this training in throughout childhood where your needs aren't being met or your perceived needs aren't being met. So therefore, you know, that's just how life is. So no point in asking.
Well, I'll share an insight with you. I'm a contributor to Newsweek's Expert Forum. And if you're listening in, if you go to Newsweek Expert Forum, Goulston, you'll find all kinds of blogs I've written. And a recent one was called Resistance to Change Doesn't Exist.
Right.
But if you think instead of resistance, we're talking about rejection, you know, being told no. And the article basically said that sometimes what you and I view as rejection, from their point of view, is self-preservation.
Mm.
So something that I've noticed even in my present relationship, and I feel incredibly grateful to my family, especially to my wife, for giving me, you know, a relatively functional family. But what I've noticed is at any given moment, they're overwhelmed, you know, by all the demands of life. And when I ask something, hey, could you do such and such? Could you pick up such and such? The immediate reaction and response is they'll roll their eyes and then I'll say, never mind, I'll do it myself.
Yes.
But what I'm realizing, what's interesting, and I pointed this out recently to my wife in a sort of humorous way. I'd say, you know, I've noticed, and she takes on too much. I mean, she just, you know, she's very responsible. She's worried about kids, grandkids, and tries to help out and everything. And so if I make a request, there's no room in her mind. So it's self-preservation. So her immediate reaction is, you know, no. But what I've noticed is I'll say to myself, well, I'll take care of it. And then 2 hours later, she's taking care of it.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is, so here's something for you, our listeners. Sometimes if you make a request of someone who's overwhelmed, their immediate reaction is not necessarily going to be their eventual response once they calm down. But if someone's overwhelmed and someone, this to our listeners, JJ and I had a little of this before today's show. And she said, Mark, all the links are on that spreadsheet that I sent you for if you could just look at them, Mark, I sent it to you and you keep repeating it. And she said it in a very charming, I couldn't even, I said there was a modicum of passive aggressiveness, but, I think the world of JJ, and I had it coming. Although in my overwhelmed mind, I smiled, I said, well, I'll find it. And, after we finish today, I'm going to look for it and I'm going to say, JJ, don't beat me up, send it to me again. And I'm going to tape it to the wall. But do you follow what I'm saying is that sometimes, people are just walking around and they're just overwhelmed. What's going on in their head, managing their life, and I can see why their initial reaction is I can't take another responsibility because I'm not even managing what's on my plate now. But if it's a reasonable request, that fits within their role vis-a-vis you, and I've done that. I mean, my wife will say, well, check this thing, get this I can't get this document. I don't know how to sign this document on DocuSign. Can you make sure you get that done? And then I'm not that good with technology. And then when I get home, she said, oh no, I figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is true. I did say, that list I send you, it's all on there. You're right. There was a touch of passive aggressive in there. Absolutely. I hold my hand up. But thing is, I do recognize that we're all a bit overwhelmed right now. And I get overwhelmed with all the messages and the emails and all the new technology things. I'm speaking like an old person here, but you know what I'm saying? We do move into overwhelm, because there's so much stuff that we have to take on board daily. And so I can completely see. And I knew that you will have looked at the emails and it's just gone somewhere and you can't, where it is. But listen, I do the same. I'm the same with emails. I'm the same. Somebody will say to me, I sent you all of that the other day. And you think, oh God, really?
One of the things that I'm sort of laughing, but I think this is a passive aggressive response, not to the universe, but every now and then, you'll send out, you're trying to move forward on a project and you'll send something out and you'll remind someone, and then they don't get back to you for a week. But when they get back to you, they want an immediate response.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that happens so much.
It does.
And, and then you'll get, I understand you're busy, but do you want to proceed on this? I was waiting for 2 weeks and, and I wasn't just spending my life waiting for that response. I had other things. Mm-hmm. And so, but they finally did follow through and said, haven't heard from you. This was 24 hours later. Do you still want to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. That is so annoying. I've experienced that as well.
I think that's a mini red flag that I should note, because if this is a person who will take long to get back to you, but when they do, they want an immediate response, and then is ready to say, well, if you don't want to do it, we don't have to do it. I hadn't thought about it, but that's probably a mini red flag for potential areas of friction down the road.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes, it would be. I would see it as that as well. You would think twice about going forward with somebody who behaves like that, I think. Yes. So yeah, getting our needs met, it's so interesting, isn't it? But in so many different ways. Um, it's very interesting how different people react to different situations. And talking about asking for, for what we want and what we need, and that experience that we've had in childhood, it's taken so long, so long for me to get out of that and into a place where I can actually say, this is what I want and this is what I need. And we were saying before we started recording, this is what I deserve. That's the tricky one, isn't it? This is what I deserve. That's a really difficult one.
Well, it's really interesting, and we're probably coming close to a break.
We are.
Are my instincts working well?
They're working really well today. Yeah.
I'm not even looking at a clock, but
I know you're not. Well, I'll tell you what then, let's go for a break right now. So we'll be back with more thoughts on asking for what we deserve and other things right after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Hurt Less, Live More here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio station, with me, JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and Dr. Mark Goulston. And before we took a break, Mark, you were about to say something about our asks.
Well, before we took the break, you'd mentioned something where you said, I realized that finally I deserve things. And I wanted us to play around with deserved versus entitled.
Oh, yes.
Because I think difficult people feel entitled to what they really don't deserve. And they provoke us and maneuver us before we throw that in their face and say, what have you done to deserve this? What have you done to earn what you're acting entitled to? On the other side of it are neurotic people like me, where I don't feel entitled to what I actually do deserve.
Yes. I completely resonate with that. Yeah. It's yes. So how does that come about then? I mean, what is it that stops us from feeling that we deserve what we deserve?
Well, I think part of it is I've probably resented people who acted entitled to what they don't deserve.
Right.
But, I'm not someone who directly shows that resentment. I'll sneak it in by being passive aggressive. Like JJ was saying, he's ticking me off. I've sent him this list. It's like I have OCD right now. I sent him this list. He should know that all the links are there. If he just looks into his email, just do a search mark. But I don't feel entitled to get angry at him. I know he's busy. We're partners in this undertaking. But it does, I'm a little bit miffed by it.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't feel entitled to get angry at him because, the pluses have hopefully outweighed the minuses of our co-hosting and relationship. And I think that's something that I have felt that I'm not entitled to be angry, which is underneath my being hurt. And I think that, and it may be that because I'm so unused to really getting angry, it's a potentially out of control and unruly emotion.
Yeah.
And and I've actually done programs on our Jungian shadow. So Carl Jung talked about that there's a shadow in our personality, and everybody has it. And it's the dark side of our personality. It's the part of us that, yes, holds grudges. Yes, feels self-pity. Yes, has a chip on our shoulder. And we all have it. And I can tell you that because as a psychotherapist for many years, we all have it. But we don't want to admit it to ourselves because we feel ashamed of it. And we don't want to really let the world see it because the world may judge us as much as we judge ourselves for having it. And so it kind of quietly wreaks havoc inside us. And one of the things that freed me is when I realized that I have all these sort of negative qualities and attributes, as long as I don't act on them, and I seem to have a pretty good way of not acting on them. I think being passive aggressive is when they leak out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And like you, I acknowledge that there's, no, I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody's perfect and good all the time and doesn't have negative emotions. So yeah, I accept that I have those. When I acknowledge them, and take a step back. Now, you were talking about downshifting, right? Taking that moment to step back. You talked about this before we came to record. I think that's such a good thing to do, is to take that step back and just let it, for me, just let it flow through. Now, there are times when it doesn't flow through and I actually let rip at somebody, because... But I always say better out than in. And, then you hope that the air is cleared at that point, and then you can move forward. And hopefully if you're shouting at somebody or, being angry with someone, they can move forward as well. They can take it and move forward.
I can go into those steps because I think part of what we're talking about also is there may be difficult people in our life that trigger upset inside us.
Yeah.
And trigger initially hurt.
Yeah.
But hurt feels too vulnerable, too weak. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we often go from our hurt into our resentment and anger. But then from our core, we don't want to see ourselves at our core as just angry people. We have trouble dealing with it. And one of the things that JJ and I were talking about before the show today is something that I call rinse and repeat, which is how to deal with those difficult people who continually press our buttons to provoke us, because in a provoked state, we're off balance. And when we're off balance, we're much easier for them to take advantage of because we're off balance. And so we were talking about one approach that I've found useful, and I'm hoping if you're listening in, you might find it useful, is identify those people. Write down on a piece of paper all the people that just the mention of their name puts a knot in your stomach. Just even a voicemail or a text puts a knot in your stomach. So identify those people and never expect them not to be that way if they're wanting something and it's not going their way. So always hold a little bit of yourself back so that you're not leading with your chin, and have the conversation. And then if they do that little nasty thing that they do, what you want to do is follow the rinse step. And the first step is to say to yourself, triggered. What you're saying to yourself, they have just triggered me. The second step is downshift. And the idea being that when you downshift in a car, it gives you control of the road. You pull the road towards you. When you step on the accelerator and you're going around a turn, you're going to go off the cliff. So triggered, downshift. And even as I say the word, I feel my voice is going deeper as opposed to going up like this, downshift. The third step is pause and look down. just calmly pause and look down. And what's often going to happen is it's going to provoke them because they weren't able to provoke you. And you're just very calm. And in your mind, think, I have the right to delete everything they just said to me when they were talking over or at me. And they have the right to say anything they want, but I have the right to ignore it until they speak to or with me. And you're looking down, they're getting more upset because they couldn't provoke you. And they're going to say, what? And then you calmly look up at them. And this is the repeat. You say, it sounded important what you were saying, but I couldn't listen to it because of the way you said it. Could you repeat everything you said so I could listen to it? Because I wasn't able to listen to it because I've made this promise to myself that when anyone is talking over at or yelling at me, they certainly have the right to express themselves any way they choose, but I have the right to not listen to it. And it sounded important. Do you want to repeat what you said? And if you do, because it was important, could you try doing it, kind of in a calmer voice? And then if they escalate, because you dared to call them on their manipulation, you just repeat the thing. You say to yourself, oh, triggered, downshift, look down, pause, let them vent, and repeat it.
Mm.
I wonder if a journalist could do that because, you're under such pressure. And then when you have a politician baiting you, and they like to bait you because they know if they bait you and provoke you, it's tough for you to maintain your focus. But I would just love to see a journalist taking on one of these difficult people. I guess they're under so much pressure in real time. You got to get the news out. You got to think. But I think if you just went through those steps and looked down, I could see that when the person knows you're calling them on their manipulation, that they're in real time. They'll get angry at you.
Well, I think it's a great thing to do. I will say though that we have a very different culture, or did have a very different culture of journalism between the USA and the UK. In the USA, journalists are very much more accommodating of politicians and people like that. And here in the UK, we haven't been up until now. And there have been some very famous journalists who've hosted shows, and they've been very much the combatant, if you like, and haven't let politicians off the hook. In fact, there's one presenter who was famous for asking a particular politician at one point, Michael Howard, asking him, I think it was 14 times, the same question, and he didn't answer it. And at the end, Jeremy Paxman's the very well-known presenter here in the UK, who we don't see so much of now, but he asked him, I think it was 14 times, the same question, didn't get an answer, and in the end just said, well, you're obviously not going to answer my question, and moved on. But it became famous. It was a famous case of, you're not going to get away with it kind of thing. But it was combative. How do you pronounce that word? You know what I'm saying. He was actually going into battle, and he would not let it go. He was like a dog holding on to the dog chew when you're trying to take it out of the dog's mouth. He would not let it go. And the politician, actually, if you watch that clip again, you probably find it on YouTube somewhere. It was very difficult for him, and it actually impacted his career quite negatively, the fact that he didn't stand up to that. But yes,
who didn't stand up to what?
The politician did not stand up to the journalist, so he didn't answer the question, which was put to him 14 times. And he kept trying to give, the excuses and, the runarounds, and it just appeared terrible for him. So what he should have done was either answer the question honestly, which he couldn't, because it was devil you do, devil you don't, right? So it was just one of those cases where he was caught between a rock and a hard place. If he'd answered the question absolutely straight, he was letting himself in for a lot of trouble. But by not answering the question, he did the same thing too. What he wasn't counting on was being asked about 14 times.
Let me ask you how you think this would float.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was the politician
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to answer the question, obviously, what if he said, I don't want to give you an answer because it wouldn't be my best answer. And it's an important question. And I don't want to cheat you out of my best answer. And I'd have to check on some things and get back to you. And if you're willing and you want to get back to me, I'll answer the question, but I want to check on some things because I don't have an answer at the ready right now. That would be my best answer. That's a good question. And can we go on to another question?
Yeah, and that's what I would suggest to people as generally. In this case, however, it was whether this man had or had not done something. So it was a yes or no answer. Did you or did you not? And he kept beating around the bush. But yes, you're absolutely right. In general terms, if you satisfy the questioner by saying, that's a great question. I don't have all the facts at my fingertips right now, but I'll get back to you and let you know. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You have to satisfy the questioner. You can't if it's a yes or no answer and you know that whichever way you go, you're laying yourself in for an awful lot of trouble. So, and this was many years ago now. Things have changed. I think the whole landscape in the media has changed lately. But yes, in those days, Jeremy Paxman was a bit of a Rottweiler.
So what if I like these challenges? And what if I'm the politician and it's a yes or no answer?
Yeah.
And what if I were to say, and I was just honest, say, here's the honest answer. Yes. But if you're asking me the question, please give me the respect to be able to tell you if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done that.
Well, that would have saved a personal reputation, wouldn't it? I think that would have gone down well, I think, with the public. Yes. Because it leaves the politician in a place of being able to afford some respect from the public, because somebody listening to that or watching that will say, "Oh, okay, so he's got he's brave enough to be honest, and he's kind of being apologetic for what he's done and saying that he wouldn't have done if he." Yeah, I can take that on board. I think that would be probably one of the better ways through that kind of scenario. Yeah.
And
yeah.
What if I added this, and then we'll go to a break? What if I added?
Well, so good on timings these days.
I don't know why. If I had said I did that, and if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done it. Furthermore, going forward, what do you and the public want to need from me so I can make them whole?
Yeah.
From having done that.
If ever a politician gets to the point where they feel able to speak in that way, I'll be very happy. On that note, let's go for a break. We'll be right back with more after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Hurt Less, Live More with me, JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and Dr. Mark Goulston. And we were talking about how politicians might respond better to certain questions that they're asked by journalists. And, the example that we were giving was from way back when. Probably some of our younger listeners wouldn't remember it at all, not like us old people. But the way we respond to these things, the way we communicate, it's really important, isn't it? We sometimes we wonder at the response that we get from people, but often it's the way that we respond to them. It's a two-way street, communication, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Something I wanted to share with our younger listeners. And I've been working with some younger people in their late 30s, early 40s, and about their relationship. And one of the things that I pointed out is that frequently if one of the spouses, sees the other person doing something or failing to do something or doing something stupid, often the observer will snap at them, will get angry at them, will yell at them. And what I pointed out to that spouse is the more you react that way, the more the other person flips a switch in their brain and thinks, I just need to get through this conversation. They are not listening to you at all because they feel attacked by you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm working with a couple and I said, try this on for size. And I asked the upset spouse, when your spouse did or failed to do what you got angry at them about, what was the effect on your trust and respect for them? And the angry spouse paused and said, it dropped. And I said, what was the effect of losing trust and respect for someone that you really still love? What is it like to lose trust and respect for someone you love because of something they do or fail to do? Is it more angering or is it more hurtful? Did you feel hurt? Did you feel afraid if that continues, this could be a game ender? And the angry spouse, who was very smart, said, the hurt is terrible. And I had them both on a Zoom. And I said, why don't you look at them? And I do this thing called the fishbowl. I say, why don't you look at your spouse and say, when you did such and such, or you failed to do such and such, my trust and respect for you went way down. And you have no idea how much it hurts to lose trust and respect for someone you love. And it injured me. Please don't do that again. And when the upset spouse said that, they started crying because they were speaking their truth underneath their angry reaction. And as I said, I have this thing called the fishbowl technique, which is interesting because I can do this on a Zoom call halfway around the world, which it was.
Yeah.
And the other spouse who had done something or failed to do something wanted to look away. And I said, don't look away. Your other spouse is not attacking you with anger. They're reaching out to you with the hurt of losing trust and respect for you.
Yeah.
Did you follow me? And as I was articulating it, the upset spouse is crying even more deeply. And then I asked that spouse, you're crying more deeply. Why? And they said, it's been going on for a while. And every time it happens, it takes a little bit more of my trust and respect away, and I'm starting to think, how can I respect myself to be with someone that I've lost trust and respect for? But do you follow me? So
Yeah.
the other party totally got it.
Mm.
And I said, just keep looking at your spouse who you've hurt, but they've reacted to their hurt by getting angry at you.
Yeah.
Uh, and then, because I'm unrelenting, I said to that spouse, look into the eyes of your spouse who's crying right now, not angry. And I want you to imagine when you first met and how you adored each other. And I want you to imagine what you've done to that person you once adored. And I said, keep looking at each other. I know you want to look away.
Mm-hmm.
But can you see it was
Yeah.
alchemy. It was alchemy at its best.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And, relationships are so tricky. And so often that hurt, our show's called Hurt Less, Live More, but so often that hurt is perceived as anger, or it comes out as anger. And it's only when we look past the surface of what's erupting from that volcano and we look beneath that we can see that there's a whole load of hurt there. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, we've done a fair amount of episodes and I like that we've kind of circled back to why we call our show what we call it, because I think what you're pointing to is too often when people feel hurt, they strike out with anger, or they strike inward with alcoholism, drugs, kicking the dog. And I think one of the reasons we came up with this show is that if there was a way for people to express the hurt as hurt, like I just demonstrated with this particular couple,
exactly,
they would hurt less and they wouldn't have the need to retaliate for the wound.
Yeah.
Because the wound would begin to heal.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was hearing. And it's a beautiful thing. But it's so easy, isn't it? It's so easy to just lash out with anger, or as you say, go to numb that hurt without expressing it. So would you say that usually or always or mostly the best thing to do is to express that hurt, to vocalize it, to talk to somebody and let that hurt be heard? Would you say that that's one of the best ways forward?
Absolutely. I was on Oprah many years ago about, one of the things I also did was I helped divorced couples get back together again. And they found me. I've never marketed anything that I've done, but people would find out that I could sort of do that. And one of the things I said on Oprah is, if you're going to have an argument, and you're not going to be speaking nicely at the beginning of it, but if your commitment is to speak from, and this is a little bit, embellished, but it's memorable. If you're going to be speaking from the hate, you need to keep speaking until you're speaking from the hurt underneath it.
Yeah.
So yes, when you're upset, it probably takes too much restraint to immediately speak from the hurt because we're human. We're reacting. We feel wounded. But if your commitment and if what we're sharing with our listeners they can relate to is that underneath anger is hurt. And the less that we actually express the hurt and have it heard, the more there's a cumulative buildup of the unexpressed hurt. And so rather than it being able to heal by expressing it and having someone say, "Oh, I just thought you were angry at me." No, I'm not angry at you. I'm hurt.
Yeah.
And the hurt is so deep, and I have trouble trusting you. And the hurt is so deep, I wouldn't share it with you because I don't trust that you could just hear it without reacting or rubbing my face in it, which I think would then turn the hurt back into being infuriated with you. And that's where what our relationship has come to. And I need to do something with it because it's destroying me from the inside and destroying us.
Yeah. Yes. And I just realized as you were talking that I had an issue with somebody recently, and it was one of those situations where I just felt I had to just say, I don't want to hear this anymore. I don't want this in my life. And I'm now just realizing actually that at the root of that was a lot of hurt, because I had done something for that person and it was in no way recognized or appreciated. In fact, quite the opposite. And I've just realized that. So thank you for that. I might well take steps to rectify that situation now, because.
Well, here's a tip if you can relate to what JJ's saying. A lot of times, if you're not comfortable really getting angry, getting the hate out so you can speak to the hurt, what we do is we avoid the person.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that's the majority of people. If you can relate to that, one of the things you can do is you can reach out to that person and say, I'd like your help with something. That's what I call assertive humility. I'd like your help with something. What? When would you have 10 minutes where, you know, I can run it by you? So hopefully you set a time. And then you say, I'm getting very close to ghosting you. I'm getting very close to avoiding you. And the reason I'm getting close to it is because of A, B, and C. And I'm bringing it up because I have a feeling I'm not the only one who wants to avoid you. And as part of who I am, I don't want to be someone who avoids some or ghosts them without telling them why I'm close to doing it. And then, by the way, you can get angry at me. You can tell me to F off. You can say whatever you want. But I want to be able to at least tell you why I'm close to doing that before I do it, because that's just part of my own commitment to myself. You know, you need to tell people when you're about to avoid them or ghost them, because there's a good chance that nobody's telling them. They're just avoiding them. And you can leave that conversation, even if they yell at you, saying, yeah, you know, I would have liked a different response from them, but I'm glad I brought it up. I'm glad I brought it up because I was respectful and I was telling them I don't want to avoid you, but this is why I'm about to. Does that make any sense?
I think that is brilliant, yes. And it's something that I will definitely bear in mind and use myself, because, we don't really want to ghost people unless we, really have to. I mean, why would we do that? And everybody's coming from their own places of hurt as well. So it's also a question of just understanding that other people have their issues too. And let's just talk about them. It's fantastic, Mark. And what a great way to end the show, because that's where we are again. I really enjoyed it again. And I'm just once again, it's just a bit like a free therapy session for me. Do you realize that? It's like I get this free therapy. I get these great tips on what to do, how to get past all my hurts. It's fantastic. So yeah, Mark, people want to get in touch with you to maybe speak to you or listen to more of your stuff. Where do they find out more about you?
Well, my LinkedIn is kind of a moving target, but it's evolving. And I'll give you a quick announcement. In the near future, my profile is going to say that I am the co-founder of Go Deeper Coaching and the creator of Go Deeper Coaching Certification, a division of On Global Leadership, which works with leaders across the world. And they're taking me in, I believe, as a partner. And it's for people who want to go deeper, so it's for coaching clients who not only discover how to execute strategies, but they discover something about themselves that actually opens them up to more. And so it's an extension and it's an offering to our existing coaching clients to say, I might want to go deeper because what you opened up about me has really helped.
Brilliant. And I'm knocking my microphone over here, but fantastic announcement there. And do get in touch with me. You can contact me through thepracticalalchemist.uk. And with that, we're right at the end. If you've been listening to this on a podcast channel, do let us know. Tell us that you like it. Share the podcast. Let everybody know. You never know who's going to really need to hear something that's in this show. But for now, it's goodbye from me and Mark.